Operations and innovation repel each other, according to management theories. Yet, as husband and wife, we know that operations and innovation can also attract to each other, as we prove with 25 years plus of marriage. We have had many kitchen conversations around this topic, and we shared with you one last time. This time we thought we'd do another one, more related to key performance indicators, or KPIs. My name is Wim Lindenbach. I worked in the chemicals and oil industry for 25 years on the operational side, dealing with short-term issues, product quality issues, a customer delivery issue, a maintenance issue, trying to get me out of that and focusing on the long term. Because I think we all know that operational excellence generates your profits today. However, innovation excellence will generate your profits tomorrow.
And my name is Floor Blindenbach, and I've always been on the innovation side of things. I've even obtained my PhD to investigate knowledge-intensive organizations such as law firms, engineering firms, and hospitals. And I'm the founder of Organizer of Innovation, and we created a steering wheel for innovation projects because we saw that in these industries, getting from idea to results is just such a followable process, and to improve that. But that's not the topic of today. Today, I was just really curious to know, in all the research I've done, and when I interview innovation managers, and when I ask them, like, what are your KPIs, key performance indicators, just to be clear, many of them say, like, I wish I had them, I don't. And on the one hand, I get that, because innovation is like the outcome of the innovation process, these new products and new services or whatever. That's a very, like, a long lead time, and it's difficult to predict. At the same time, I think it's also kind of a bit of an excuse. So I would love to know, like, in operations, I assume you have more processes that are uncertain or have a lot of stakeholders involved, where, like, the relationship between actions and outcomes is not always so direct. So my question to you would be, like, what would be some similar processes that we could compare innovation against, and then can we come up with some good KPIs?
Yeah, we clearly have a lot of processes where there's uncertainty in the process. An obvious one will probably be supply chain, but maybe we start with one which is at the heart of operation will be safety. Clearly, again, the outcome is easy to measure. That's the number of accidents you have or incidents, the number of emissions, the number of fatalities, or the lack of any of those, depending if you look at it more positively or negatively. But that's not all. On safety, we also measure a lot of things we're doing. How many safety meetings do we have? How many times do we do a last-minute safety observation in the field? How many near losses are we reporting? How well are those near losses converted into actions? And how many of these actions are being resolved in a specific time frame?
So just help me understand. So that sounds like a lot that we can learn from. So I'm processing. So who keeps track of these? Like, is that something, and how often do you discuss them? Is that something that you keep top of mind?
Yeah. Clearly, in the manufacturing world, safety is top of mind, and so
even have, like, when you enter the factory, it's like
it's there. Well, you see at least the outcome. You see the number of incidents you have, the day since the last injury. Yeah, you measure there. But if you go to a daily, weekly, monthly stewardship meeting, you will talk about the safety process. You talk about how often have you, as a plant manager, be in the field and talk to your people about safety? How many near losses have you generated as an organization? And how many of those near losses have been resulting into an action? And how quickly have we resolved that action and have communicated it back to the originator of the report, of the near loss report?
Oh, wow. I was just smiling, not because I think it's terrible to have these safety accidents, but wouldn't it be awesome if you have, like, last time since we had a new product or new service implemented at the front?
Yeah.
Anyways, are there other processes? Because I see there's a lot more, and I'm still processing. So you mentioned
supply chain.
Supply chain. So what are some of the things that you measure there?
Yeah, it's also clearly, if you are closer to the supply chain or you are dealing with the customers, you also talk a lot about supply chain. Again, the end product you definitely talk about. How often have we successfully delivered the product to the customer on time, in full compliance with quality and administrative matters, invoice on time and right. But we also measure the process quite well, I think, if you want to. So we start with forecast, for example, if you take the supply chain part. So how often do we forecast? How well is the forecast? How often do we change the forecast? And then when we convert the forecast into a plan, how often do we change the plan? And how frequent are we addressing the plan? So I think, again, we, a bit like safety, we're not only looking at the end product, we clearly measure the end result here, but we're also measuring the ways to get there.
So if I hear you correctly, I hear you like three types of metrics that you track. One is the outcome, which is like far in the future, which is both difficult for safety. It's something that you absolutely don't want to happen. And probably in logistics, it's stuff that you want to happen. Then you seem to have like process outcomes, and then you have activity-based outcomes. So if you would translate that to innovation, if I'm trying to be a good student here. So the outcomes would be like new products or even revenue generated, cost saved.
That will probably be the best outcomes.
Outcomes. Process-wise, I heard a few really interesting things, like the number of forecasts you made and how often you corrected them. But I think even more simple things like how many hours are being burned in the process, how long does it take for each of the phases? So there's a lot to measure on the process side. And then on the activity side, I also heard a few very interesting ones, like in how many meetings were things brought up, or how many ideas were brought up. As a safety, you kind of like walk the plan. So how often did you go out in the field and collect ideas?
Yes, and how many of those ideas are resulting into an activity, into an action or a project?
Yeah.
It's interesting. In all my years, we have used the word innovation a lot, but I cannot think about a single occasion where in one of my stewardship reports we had the number of times somebody, a leader in the field, talked about innovation ideas with the team. Never.
No, of how many hours are burned on innovation projects?
No, not at all. No.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to address, because innovation and operations, as we said, like that is perhaps very far apart. We know also from our kitchen table conversations that something more in the middle are environmental sustainability projects, and something that is both close to our heart. Could we apply that there? Because innovation projects have a terrible track record, but I understood from Bain that environmental sustainability projects, they have even a worse record. Is that also your experience, or?
Well, clearly the end result again is relatively easy to measure. If I think about the process industry, you can measure energy consumption or the changes in energy consumption. You can measure the amount of waste you produce or the amount of waste you recycle or the changes you make to the process.
So those would be again like outcome.
The outcome ones are, but process-wise, I don't think we have a lot of success. Although it should be, we can measure activities and processes. How often have you generated a sustainability project, and how many of those sustainability projects are going from idea into execution phase?
And how long does these phases last? How much time do you spend in each?
Yeah,
and probably also the forecast. If you predict that something will reduce a 10% reduction in energy, how often were you right? If you take the
yeah. So in a sense, there's a lot of similarities with innovation, and it might actually be a little bit easier because at the end of the day, you could measure it. It's at the end of the day, there is a product, there is something which is happening here. But the short-term ones, and then they have long-term ones. You can measure how many projects are there to reduce waste or to change light bulbs into LED LEDs and the likes. The more interesting ones are the longer-term ones.
Changing the feedstock.
Changing the feedstock for your products,
from a petrochemical to an organic base. That would be, I assume, a very long-term project.
Yeah, and then in the middle is maybe, okay, how can we convert from gas fired to, I don't know, wind fired or solar energy.
Yeah. Anyways, I hope you found this very interesting. We kind of shifted towards sustainability projects because with our steering wheel, we currently are able to measure both activity-based and well as process-based indicators for the innovation process. We are looking forward to also applying that to environmental sustainability projects. So if that is an interest of you as well, please reach out to us at organizing4innovation.com, and that's a numeric 4, so organizing and then a numeric 4 innovation.com. And we are really looking forward to see if there are opportunities to collaborate and see if we can find those activity and process indicators that lead then to better outcome indicators for environmental sustainability projects. Thank you.
Thank you.